Adonai horivei ishi mimi hira Adonai me'oz chayai mimi ivchad.
This is our 5th week of our 8-week session, and tonight we're going to cover chapters 10 through 11 in the book What If the Cross Changed Everything, and that actually covers Revelations chapters 4 through 6. So we got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Yeah, so that's okay. So last week, if you remember right, we talked about each one of the churches and the messages that God had for each of the churches to help get them out of the messes that they were in. And with each one of those, he revealed himself in a covenant way that they would need to help them navigate out of the mess that they had found themselves in, giving himself to them in a covenant way and offering the opportunity. So anyway, things change beginning in chapter 4 of Revelation. Now what we're going to see is the throne room of heaven. So beginning in chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "After this, I looked, and there in heaven a door stood open. And the first voice, which I had heard speaking to me like a trumpet, said, 'Come up here. And I will show you what must take place after this.' At once I was in the Spirit, and there in heaven stood a throne, with one seated on the throne. and the one seated there looks like jasper and carnelian, and around the throne a rainbow that looks like an emerald. And around the throne are 24 thrones, and seated on the thrones were 24 elders dressed in white robes with gold crowns on their heads. Coming down from the thrones are flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder. And in front of the throne burned 7 flaming torches, which were the 7 spirits of God. And the front of the throne there was something like a sea of glass, like crystal. Around the throne and on each side of the throne are 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and behind. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like an ox, the third living creature with the face of a human, and the fourth living creature like a flying eagle. And the 4 living creatures, each of them with 6 wings, were full of eyes all around and inside. Day and night without ceasing they sing, 'Holy, holy, holy, the Lord God, the Almighty, who was and is to come.' And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to the one who is seated on the throne, who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before the one who is seated on the throne and worship the one who lives forever and ever. They cast their crowns before the throne, singing, 'You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive the glory and the honor and the power. For you created all things, and by your will they existed and they were created.'" So this is what John saw in the courtroom of heaven, and so just like today's courtroom, we have the exact same participants in the heavenly courtroom. We have a judge, and that judge is God. We have the lawyers or the experts in the law, and that's the 24 elders. We have the parties involved. And in this case, it's that sea of humanity, that crystal sea. We have witnesses, which are the 4 living creatures. We have the court deputy, which is the angel. And then we have the court reporter, who's John. Okay, that was the entire chapter 4. Now we're going to get to chapter 5 in Revelation. It says, "Then I saw in the right hand of the one seated on the throne." Who's seated on the throne? God. I tried to find pictures, and almost all of them have Jesus seated on the throne. Kind of interesting. But it's God who is seated on the throne. And he has a scroll written on the inside and on the back, and it's sealed with 7 seals. Verse 2, "And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and to break its seals?' And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. And I began to weep bitterly, because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it." Okay, so now just for a time to establish a timeline, when would this have been written? I mean, when he was seeing in the spirit realm, was this before the cross or after the cross? It would have been before. He was seeing, because it said in verse 4, it says, "I will show you things that," what was it? "I'm going to show you things before." So he's looking back in time into the courtroom of heaven, and there is nobody that is worthy to open this scroll and find out what's in it. Verse 4 says, "I began to weep bitterly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look onto it." Okay, so then verse 5 of chapter 5 says, "Then one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has conquered so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals.'" Now this elder of the law, one of the 24 elders, says, "Wait, don't worry. This is now we do have someone who is able to worthy to open the scroll." Okay, and to remove its 7 seals. "Then I saw between the throne and the 4 living creatures and among the elders a lamb standing as if it had been slaughtered, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent out into all the earth." Okay, horns always represent authority or power. So what he's saying symbolically is, in the middle of this courtroom, I see, and before in verse 5, he's described as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David. So here is a lion who appears as a lamb. Jesus is one and the same, of course. He is a lion who allowed himself to be sacrificed as a lamb, and the 7 horns, 7 always represents a completion, total. And so the 7, it's like he has total authority in allowing himself to be sacrificed. Although yes, he was the Lion of the tribe of Judah, allowing himself to be sacrificed as a lamb is what gave him all of the authority. He has complete authority. The 7 eyes, again, means he has complete understanding, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. He went and he took the scroll from the right hand of the one who was seated on the throne. When he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell before the Lamb, each holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago what incense represents? It was from the... Yep, it's the prayers. If you remember our tabernacle image or the temple image, the altar of incense is inside that second room, which is the holy place, and it stands right before the big veil that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies, which is in the presence of God. So incense represents the prayers of the saints. Oh, and it says it right there. Never mind. The golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sing a new song. So remember, we had this song, the previous one, which was giving honor to the Lord, honor to the Creator God. He says, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord God, the Almighty, who was and is to come. You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they existed and they were created." Now they have a new song. And this song is not to God, the Creator. It is to Jesus, the slain Lamb. It says, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open the seals, for you were slaughtered, and by your blood you ransomed for God saints from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests serving our God, and they will reign on earth." So this is now something brand new. Prior to the cross, there was honor given and worship given to God. Now something else has happened, and now they have a new song declaring all that Christ accomplished, why he accomplished it, and what is going to come because of that. And that's where we come in, and it says, "And they will reign on the earth." That's you and I. Okay, then verse 11. "Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels." So now, the first we had the 24 elders that were honoring God, and when they honored God, no, we have the four living creatures. When they would honor God, then the 24 elders fell down and they cast their crowns before him. Now we have both the elders, we have the four creatures. They sang the next song. Now we have the entire host of heaven, angels, are now joining in the worship. And it says, "Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels surrounding the throne, and the living creatures, and the elders. And they numbered myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, singing with full voice, 'Worthy is the Lamb that was slaughtered to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing.' Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all that is in them singing, 'To the one seated on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever.' And the four living creatures said, 'Amen.' And the elders fell down and worshipped." Okay, so it's a magnificent picture of what's going on. First we have this, then we add this, then we add this, and now we have everybody. And then the four living creatures, they give. It's like they agree. They're the witnesses that are agreeing with all of this. And remember the living creature, we had the description, right? One looked like an ox, one looked like an eagle, one looked like a lion, and the other looked like a man. There's a few different theories on that. Some of them have to do with astronomy. I haven't really delved much into astronomy, but so I just haven't. But what I believe, because they are representing, I believe these are representatives of every created faction on earth that breathes air. We have humanity, We have domestic animals, which would be represented by the ox. We have wild animals represented by the lion. And then we have the birds represented by the eagle. All of those pictures or images represent the highest, or I don't know what to, the alpha, that would work in each one of those categories. The lion's king of the jungle, king of wild beasts. And again, when our perspective is from Israel's perspective, what it was like, they had lions in their they had lions. Because we know in Proverbs it says the sluggard says, I'm not going to go out because there's a lion. There's a lion out there. And then we know that David, he slew a lion and a bear. So anyway, because in my little head, lions are relegated to zoos and to Africa, and it's only recently, like in the last less than a decade, that I realized that we have lions here in our backyard. But that's a whole other story. So each one of those are, I believe, representatives, and they speak for their kingdoms, I guess, for a lack of a better word. And so when now this great declaration over God of creation and Jesus, this lamb, or this lion that as a lamb was slain, who is now given all authority, his 7 horns representing that, and all understanding, the 7 eyes representing that, understanding through God's perspective. It says, because those are the spirits of God. Looking at everything from God's perspective, he's able to see, unlike our limitations. So they are declaring from earth. They're agreeing to everything that has been declared. Okay? And when that happened, everybody fell down and worshiped. Okay, so what is this whole idea of being worthy? Like, what was the criteria for Christ to be made worthy? For years, I thought it was that he lived a sinless life, which he did, but that is not what qualified him to be able to open this scroll. What qualifies him to be able to open the scroll is he was our kinsman redeemer, and that we're going to talk about all of the qualifications for that. A kinsman redeemer is a relative who restores or preserves the full community rights of disadvantaged family members. The concept arises from God's covenant relationship with Israel and points to the redemption of humanity in Jesus Christ. So the covenant rules for a kinsman redeemer, he is obligated to redeem the land, and that's found in Leviticus 25, verses 25 through 28. It says, if anyone of your kin falls into difficulty and sells a piece of property, then the next of kin shall come and redeem what the relative has sold. If the person has no one to redeem it, but then prospers and finds sufficient means to do so, the years since its sale shall be computed, and the difference shall be refunded to the person to whom it was sold, and the property shall be returned. But if there are not sufficient means to recover it, what was sold shall remain with the purchaser until the year of Jubilee. In the Jubilee it shall be released, and the property shall be returned. When God was establishing the promised land and which family members, which tribes would have which pieces of property, it was important that they remained in that family, and so God made provision. If anybody falls on hard times, they have to sell their property. It was an obligation of a near kinsman to redeem that property for their family member, and if they had the means to do so. Let's see. The kinsman redeemer is obligated to redeem the enslaved. And that is found in Leviticus 25, verses 47 through 55. And it just simply says the same thing. If a family member falls on hard times and has to sell himself into slavery and become an indentured servant, it was a family member's duty and obligation, if they had the means, to pay that person's debt, pay the family member's debt, and redeem them. And like I said, you can read about that in Leviticus 25, verses 47 through 55. The kinsman redeemer is obligated to provide an heir. And that you can read about. It's in, Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 through 10. It says, when brothers reside together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall take her in marriage, and performing the duties of a husband's brother to her, and the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the deceased brother, so that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. God takes this really seriously. So, and then you have one incident in particular where the brother was not interested in having, if it was going to be his child, it was going to be his child. He wasn't going to let his dead brother's name be carried out in his lineage, and God wasn't really excited about that. But I don't know, does that make sense? So far, the kinsman redeemer has to be able to follow all of these criteria. Let's see. Oh, I didn't finish that. The provide an heir. In verse 7 of Deuteronomy 25, it says, "But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother's widow shall go up to the elders at the gate and say, 'My husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me.' Then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. And if he persists, saying, 'I have no desire to marry her,' then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and declare, 'This is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. Throughout Israel his family shall be known as the house of him whose sandal was pulled off.'" It's kind of a funny image. But yeah. And then we'll read more about this. And the whole idea about taking off the sandal is, that is something that wouldn't be easily accomplished, that the person is going to have to agree to have that done. Think, okay, take off. So anyway, and then the last one, he's obligated to avenge death. This one I would like to spend some time thinking about. I'm not going to do it right here in front of you, but the whole idea of avenging death and that how Christ accomplished that in our lives, I think really would be great to meditate on. But anyway, that's found in Numbers 35, verses 16 through 21. "But if anyone who strikes another with an iron object, and death ensues, is a murderer. the murderer shall be put to death. Or anyone who strikes another with a stone in hand that could cause death, and death ensues, is a murderer. And the murderer shall be put to death. Or anyone who strikes another with a weapon of wood in hand that could cause death, and death ensues, is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. The avenger of blood is the one who shall put the murderer to death. When they meet, the avenger of blood shall execute the sentence. Likewise, if someone pushes another from hatred or hurls something at another, lying in wait, and death ensues, or in enmity strikes another with his hand, and death ensues, then the one who struck the blow shall be put to death. That person is a murderer, and the avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when they meet. And then the last one is to be a trustee, and that's found in Numbers 5, verses 5 through 8. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites, when a man or a woman wrongs another, breaking faith with the Lord, that person incurs guilt and shall confess the sin that has been committed. The person shall make full restitution for the wrong, adding 1/5 to it, and giving it to the one who was wronged. If the injured party has no next of kin to whom restitution may be made for the wrong, the restitution for wrong shall go to the Lord for the priest, in addition to the ram of atonement with which the atonement is made for the guilty party." So if somebody stole something, they had to pay it back plus 1/5. And if that person was gone, like, oh, you didn't get off the hook. If the person died, you had to, the kinsman redeemer was then obligated for the debts of their family member. So do you have all of your blanks filled in for those? Okay. The kinsman redeemer is obligated to redeem the land, redeem the enslaved, provide an heir, avenge death, and be a trustee. Okay. And then we have this wonderful picture story included in the Bible about what a kinsman redeemer looks like. And it's found in the book of Ruth. And I'll just kind of give an overview, I think. Maybe. Elimelech and Naomi are a Jewish couple. They have 2 sons. And a famine falls on the land of Israel, and they head out to the land of Moab to try to, try to survive. And while they're there, they're gone for about 10 years, and while they're there, Elimelech passes away, but the 2 sons marry, and one marries a gal named Ruth, and the other one marries a gal named Orpah. Sort of like Oprah, only it's Orpah. And Naomi is, and then the two sons, they end up dying as well. So we have 3 women, 2 Moabites and one Israelite. And Naomi finds out that back in her homeland, there's no longer a famine, and she wants to go home. So she tells her daughters-in-law and that she's headed back home, and they are, they're free to stay in the land. Orpah did, but Ruth refused, and she says, "Wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people." And so they end up heading back to the land of Israel, and things aren't really, really great. If you're a gal, things are pretty tough. So Ruth, what she ended up doing was harvesting the fields, and what the way God had provided for that was, and if you read the laws in farming laws, they were not to harvest the corners of their fields, and the corners were left for people who were struggling. That was God's welfare system, basically. That the corners are yours, and you can harvest those. So that's what Ruth was doing, harvesting the corners of the field. Somehow she caught the eye of the owner of the field, and his name was Boaz, and he told his harvesters to, even what they harvested, which was his, to just take and throw a bunch of that down there so that she would have more, and that kind of thing. So so she goes home and she tells Naomi what's going on, and Naomi says, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to him, and I won't go into all of that, but you're going to go to him at night, and when he sleeps, sleep at the foot of the bed, and then she just said, and then he'll take it from there. Basically, he'll tell you what to do from there. And so Boaz, he woke up, says, I woke up about midnight, was kind of shocked to see this young gal sleeping at his feet, and we'll pick up the story there. He says, but now, though it is true, I am a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. Oh, and Boaz was Elimelech's family member. Okay? I forgot to say that. This wasn't just any person. He was a family member. It says, so remain this night, and in the morning, if he will act as next of kin. Boaz is talking to Ruth, and he says, there is somebody else who's closer than I am. And the way the hierarchy went in the near kinsman, was first it was a brother, then I believe it was an uncle, then a cousin. I think that was the hierarchy, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, he's saying there's somebody else who's closer in the family than I am. So let me go check out with him for you. Let's see. If he will act as next of kin for you, good, let him do it. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then, as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you, and lie down until the morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, and she got up before one person could recognize another, for he had said, it must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor, because, tongues will wag. Things would go badly, and then the other near kinsmen, it would get to them right away. So anyway, it says, then he said, bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out. So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley, and he put it on her back. Then he went into the city, and she came to her mother-in-law, who said, how did things go with you, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. So she replied, wait, my daughter, until you learn how this matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today. He's not going to let any grass grow under his feet. Okay, so chapter 4 of Ruth, it says, no sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there, then the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, come over, friend, and sit down here. And he went over and he sat down. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here. So they sat down. He then said to the next of kin, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in in the presence of those sitting here, and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me, so that I may know, for there's no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you. So he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you're also acquiring Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance. At this, the next of kin said, I cannot redeem it for myself, without damaging my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. So now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming land and exchanging to confirm a transaction. The one took off a sandal and he gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the next of kin said to Boaz, acquire it for yourself, he took off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that had belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Those were her sons. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabite. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to throw her in, by the way. I think that's funny. The wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead man may not be cut off from his kindred and from the gate of the native place. Today you are witnesses. Then all of the people who were at the gate, along with the elders, said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel. May you produce children, and blah, 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 be blessed. And we find out that they were indeed blessed. They were, their son was, their great-grandson was King David. So anyway, so that is what was required of a kinsman redeemer, and that's what Jesus, that's what made him worthy. Was he able to accomplish all of those things that were demanded in order to be able to see what was in that scroll that essentially was everything that humanity had lost and what he got back for us. So I guess now that brings us to, what did Roman wills look like? And here we have a little bit of Israel and their practices meet Roman law. And Roman wills, at the time that this was written, at the time that John wrote this, it had become very, very common, actually more than common, that a will had 7 seals on it. And it says, I've been reading a lot of Roman law this last week. It's kind of really boring stuff. But much is known about the seals on Roman wills, not because they are preserved, unfortunately, but because the testator himself and the 6 or 7 witnesses described their seals at the end of the will, sometimes even quite precisely, a description in each case preceded by, I will seal with, or my seal is. So here's the will, here's what's going on, this is what people are going to inherit, and so it would be written on a parchment, or papyrus, probably, and then it's rolled up, flattened out, and then folded into thirds. Then there would be holes drilled into that, so that it would be really difficult. You'd have to match up all of those holes and all that kind of stuff. So that's the image. And so then the seals were, they would be strung through the holes, and then seals made of clay put over the knots, and then pressed with a signet ring or some kind of a a mark, a seal. And everybody had, the people had their own. And it's kind of cool. What happened is because it was just clay, a lot of these just disintegrated and they were destroyed. The interesting thing about Jewish seals is because every time there's Jerusalem, their cities were attacked and burned, these clay seals became ceramic. They're like ceramic, so that made them permanent. So we have a lot of evidence of the seals that are now permanent. Don't have anything, what it was written on and all the strings and all those things would have been burned up, but the seals themselves, or the bulla, B-U-L-L-A, is the impression. We have a lot of those that are left. I thought that was fascinating. Jesus is the one who is worthy. He's to take the scroll and to open the seals and find out what humanity had lost. The other thing that's very interesting about these Romans seals, Roman legal documents, is that the majority of the signatories had to be present when it was opened. And so in this case, we have 7 of them. So there had to be at least 4 of the original witnesses when this transaction had been made. Okay? Well, this is going to get kind of complicated because we are talking about something that happened at this point almost 4,000 years prior to what John was witnessing. This is not your average lifetime kind. In this lifetime, we have these witnesses, and and they've shown up. 4 of them have come. Oh, there was that quote. Let's see. Maybe okay. A sealed will was called a will under seals. When the will had to be opened, a majority of the witnesses, 3 of the 5, 4 of the 6, or 7, had to be present. The witnesses or their representatives had to recognize the seal or establish that the seal was healthy or unbroken. Then the will was opened and read. Under a copy of the will, the witnesses present had to subscribe that they had recognized their seals. Okay, so now we have this. This is everything that humanity is writing on. What's written on this scroll, in this will. What had Christ obtained for us, and what had we lost? So there was a translation of Revelation 5, verses 5 and 6. It's under the Williams translation. I really liked it, so I'm just going to read it for you. But one of the elders said, "Stop weeping. See, the Lion who sprang up from the tribe of Judah, who belongs to the line of David, has conquered, so that he can open the book and break the 7 seals." When I saw midway between the throne and the 4 living creatures, standing among the elders, a lamb that looked as though he had been slaughtered. And he had 7 horns and 7 eyes. The latter are the 7 spirits of God, which are sent on duty to every portion of the earth. So John is in the courtroom of heaven. God is seated on the throne. Most of the principal players are assembled, and the case being considered is of universal interest. That affects all of humanity. Jesus is present as the conquering lion sacrificed as a lamb, the qualifying kinsman redeemer. All in attendance acknowledge and affirm that his right to claim the scroll. And so then something kind of interesting happens in chapter 6. The witnesses are now summoned. The witnesses who were there when this had all transpired are called forth. And they're called forth from eons past, because it's a spiritual thing. It's not a physical thing. chapter 6 says, "Then I saw the Lamb open one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures call out, as with a voice of thunder, 'Come.' I looked, and there was a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer." This is, like I said, calling forth the witnesses. When had this been settled? So I believe, in most of your translations, you'll in your Bibles, it will say "come and see," and you'll notice that the "and see" is italicized, which means it was added, hoping to make it more understandable, make more sense to us. But when you take that "and see" out, what you have is a declaration to come. Well, he's not talking to John. John is there, and he's already watching. John doesn't have to come anywhere. He doesn't have to do anything. He's already watching this. So he's not talking to John, and he's not talking to somebody to come and see what's going on. He is calling forth the witnesses, those who had put their seal on this document. So that first one is a white horse, and it was given to him a crown. There was a white horse. Its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. I believe this was established in human history back at the fall in the garden. In Genesis 3, it says, "Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord had made. And he said to the woman, 'Did God say, you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die.'" I just want to point out there that that's not what God said. She added to a little bit. But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And we all know the story. That was at the beginning. That was the very beginning of our. That's when things all fell apart at that moment. And you know that Satan was more than happy to say, "Yeah, I was there when that happened," because he's our accuser. Okay, so then at the second seal to be opened, I heard the second living creature call out, "Come!" And out came another horse. Oh, I wanted to say back there with the white horse, it doesn't say that he was a king, that he had rule, but one had been given him. That crown the first witness the first witness on the horse, he was wearing our crown, because God is the one who had crowned us with authority, and we surrendered that. Yeah. And then from the moment we gave that up, that's exactly what the enemy had set out to do, conquering and to conquer all of humanity. Okay, so now the second one called out, "Come." And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that the people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. And we make the assumption that he's given a great sword from God. But it doesn't say that. We're the ones that gave that great sword to him. Humanity had. And in Genesis 4, this is when I believe this was established, when that witness marked put his seal on that. He says, the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is lurking at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it." Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel, and he killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" And he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." So I believe that is when humanity then surrendered and gave permission. We gave that sword to that second witness and established now humanity on this path of horrid destruction and wickedness. And all along, the enemy is building a case against us. That's what this is all about. That's what we have to be redeemed from. We had to be redeemed from our humanity. We had to be redeemed from whence we fell. We gave everything over to him. Like I said, I don't know if I talked about this already, but when we think that the cross is about nothing more than sin, we miss the boat. We miss the boat. It's not about sin so much as it is about redeeming humanity. And as long as we play that game, well, my sin really isn't as bad as that, and it's, and they, at least I'm not doing that, and I'm, we play this, let's weigh things, let's weigh that, which is actually the next seal, but let's play that little game. I can be better than that, and I'm not as bad as that. That is a man-made kind of a thing, and we're playing in the completely wrong playground. It's not even the right game, but the enemy has us playing there all the time. And it has nothing to do with sin. It has everything to do with the fact that we are human, and our humanity was enslaved in a thing that we agreed to. And that their very first at the fall was, you know what? I'm going to be God. I am going to know what is good and evil. I'm going to establish that. And from that moment on, humanity was plunged into this crazy mess that Satan is just so happy to be a part of. And every time we agreed with him, we surrendered more and more of what God had intended for us all along. That is what Jesus came to redeem us from. So, anyway, let me crawl off my soapbox. So we have 2 seals, 2 witnesses, signatories. Then the 3rd seal, I heard the 3rd living creature call out, "Come." I looked, and there was a black horse, and its rider held a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's pay, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's pay, but do not damage the oil and the wine." I've spent a lot of time contemplating exactly what that means. But the scales, I absolutely believe, have to do with the world system, what I just talked about. We're trying to maintain our righteousness and our ability to be in the presence of God on our terms, and our terms say, well, this is more right than that, and that's really way more wrong. And so here's my kingdom that I've set up. Now, God, receive me into your presence based on my establishment of right and wrong. And that, like I said, we're completely playing in the wrong game, but because that's the world system that it is set up. What's interesting about this is I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures. And again, those 4 living creatures, I believe, represent all air-breathing creation. And out of the midst of them, there was something that was established. And it had to do with our survival, our ability to survive. We were now going to have to work for food. And that's how it was going to be. That's established. And that actually isn't established from the enemy. That came from heaven. So working for food and for sustenance, it says, but do not damage the oil and the wine, the things that represent covenant making elements. Oil represents the spirit, and wine represents the covenant element. So anyway, so it's like I'm reserving part of this. Heaven is saying I'm reserving this part. Like I said, what God did in a plan, the amazing plan that He accomplished using dirt and spirit and covenant. He was able to redeem all of humanity using those three things. But anyway, then opened the 4th seal, and I heard the voice of the 4th living creature call out, "Come!" And I looked, and there was a pale green horse, and its rider, the name of Death and Hades, followed with him. And there was given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill with the sword, famine, and pestilence, and by the wild animals on the earth. So we have the 4 signatories that were there when humanity fell and established this mess on the earth. And then something happens with the 5th seal. The 5th seal there is no invitation to say come, because they are already there. And that is when God stepped in, and he implemented and instituted the plan of redemption. It says, and then when he broke the 6th seal, I looked, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun turned black as sackcloth, and the full moon became like blood, and the stars in the sky fell to the earth, just as a fig tree when it's shaken in a violent wind drops its unripe figs. The sky was swept away just like a scroll, and it rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. The kings of the earth, the great men, the military leaders, the rich and the mighty, everybody, whether slaves or free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks and the mountains. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, "Fall on us and conceal us from the sight of him who is seated on the throne, from the anger of the Lamb, and because the great day of their anger has come, and who can stand it?" Okay, here we have the picture. The 6th seal is opened up, and this is a picture of the crucifixion of Christ. The sky turned black. There was a violent earthquake, and everything, it says that everything rolled back like a scroll. And what he's saying is all of the authority, everything that had been established by humanity and in agreement with Satan, was now completely rolled back, and we're starting all over again. Everything that made you mighty, everything that made you important, everything that gave you authority that had previously been. That's what mountains mean authority. It means governing authorities. So when they're saying that all of the mountains are shaken, everything is all messed up, it's not talking about the physical thing, although that happened. We had earthquakes and the sun was darkened at the crucifixion. But what happened in the spirit world when Jesus accomplished that was, okay, Satan had been in charge, and humans had been dumb enough to agree with his plan, and now Jesus, because he's redeemed us, takes everything back and says, no longer is that mountain an authorized a legitimate authority. No longer is it's not like that anymore. But the problem is people who really enjoyed the prestige that they had, the place that they held, the power that they were able to wield. If they really liked that, they still want to hide in the caves of those mountains. And it's a brand new game. And that's why it's so vitally important that we understand what Jesus came to redeem us from and to redeem us into. And we struggle all the time trying to play this new game with all the old rules. And that's why we struggle so much. This is brand new. All of the authority, all of the stuff that had been established prior to the cross are no longer legitimate authorities. He's the only one. Salvation has come. The sixth seal is accomplished by our Lord Jesus Christ on the cross and has indeed changed everything.
לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים.